Hi, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's a beautiful day to get together. So we will be so happy to talk to you today about our topic, which is, are you afraid to tell people the truth? And so we're joined together and we can add our names into the chat. This is Coach Susan. I'm Coach Jen, and we are two of Leslie's coaches, in case you're not familiar with us. So welcome, Coach Susan. How are you?
Good. So good to be with you. So good to be with everybody. I hope you're able to join us. We are on Leslie Vernick's public pages. And so just keep in mind, as you interact with us, we love the interaction, but keep in mind what you're sharing, that you're okay with anyone in the population seeing that.
Yeah.
We do have the ability to interact privately with you. So if you have a question for Jen or I, please put that through the website, leslievernick.com/question/.
Yeah. Thank you. And Karen's going to post it right now. So Karen's helping us, as she often does, our trusted support team. So thank you so much, Karen, to you and all the navigating you'll help us do today. So I think we're live on Instagram as well, right? So
We are.
Like Susan said, so welcome to our Instagram followers, Facebook people. We're glad that you're here. So let's dive in. Today we are talking about, are you afraid to tell people the truth? And as Susan and I were just debriefing a little bit before coming on live with you today, we both acknowledged that was a big topic, very, very broad. There's lots we can be afraid of. What people are we telling? What are we telling? And what is our truth? Right.
Yeah.
So lots we could unpack here. So we want to encourage you to maybe start off with, what you might be afraid of, or what someone you could imagine would be afraid of if they spoke their truth. So you can put that into the chat. Just picture somebody that you might know, go to church with, work with, care about. Why might someone be afraid to say something? And we would love to hear what your thoughts are, because we came up with a few ideas. So what are some of the things that come to your mind, Susan, about what people could be afraid of? What's holding them back from not telling the truth then?
Yeah. So when I think about our community that is mostly women, right? I realize there may be some men watching us today on the public pages, but we deal with women in our ministry. And so a lot of things that I hear is women are afraid to talk about their marriage, right? They have some fear about, will they be understood? Will they be accepted? Will they be ostracized from their church if they talk? But there's also the other aspect of, if I show up as myself, will I be accepted, right? Am I too much? Am I too little? Right? Those kind of questions come up. Do I have to be the good little girl that I was raised to be in the Christian community? Can I be bold? There's a lot of things that I can think of. What came to your
mind? Well, I'm seeing some of the comments here too. Sudden anger and outburst. So depending on, so we're going to talk about that. We'll unpack about, what people do we want to share with? How do we share with them? And how do we discern if they're safe? So if there is a threat of sudden anger and outburst, that might not be a safe person we're sharing our truth with. Depends on the dynamic and the situation. Joelle says fear of judgment, or for someone to share their disagreement about divorce. Yeah. Especially if it's not about cheating or physical abuse, because some people have different belief systems. I know some of the things that came up for me, as well as, it might sound a little more practical, but it's also around, what if people knew our truth and my husband loses his job? Right. Or there's financial impact. So there's very much, what about the social impact? So I'm not just talking about close, intimate relationships with friends and family, but what about the social impact? Will you still feel comfortable going to church or going to that small group or that outing with a bunch of people? I think that's what might hold some women back sometimes. But we want to hear from you. This is really engaging. So thank you. Like Tamara's saying about, like pornography addictions. that's what you say, the thing that's the hardest is people not believing and being okay with it. So some topics are still very taboo.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yes.
So not only do we carry our own shame if something's happened like fidelity wise or pornography use or maybe some hidden other addictions like alcohol or something. Some things are more socially accepted these days than others. And so it's hard to not only want to share your heart, but then have to educate people.
Yeah.
Because a lot of you that know me and one of my focuses around the porn use and things like that. And there's maybe not in a Christian circle concept, but there's some people that are just like, oh, all guys do it. Oh, get over it. Or so again,
Yeah, the minimization.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you're left feeling, you might already feel shame and guilt and a bunch of awful things from the situation you're in. And now, like Joelle said, getting that judgment or disagreement back from somebody else just weighs it down even more. Right. So as we're having this conversation, keep adding into the chat what people might be afraid of, what might be holding them back from speaking the truth, because hopefully as you hear Susan and I talking, you'll recognize that you're not alone. I'm sure a lot of the stuff we've just threw out there, people are probably going, aha, makes sense. Yeah.
Absolutely. Fear is a natural human response to perceived or real threats.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah. And I think we talk about it too sometimes in terms of healthy fear, meaning I don't want to go swimming in the ocean when the waves are 10 feet tall. I have a respectful fear that I could drown. That's real.
Mm-hmm.
That's real. It's when we take those fears and maybe expand on them and we attach certain beliefs, we attach certain thoughts to them, and it ends up holding us back from our big circle self, the person that God has called us to be. So one of the phrases I often use is fear is our worst counselor. It can often hold us back from things that as we get the courage or we find those safe people, we can actually be set free with being able to speak that truth. So there's a fine line there between, this truly is like life threatening, whether it's financial life, spiritual life, physical life, versus I just don't have the courage to take that step yet. And that's okay. We just want to acknowledge it and become aware that, okay, I am afraid. And Jen and Susan are helping me understand it's okay. It's okay to be afraid. So what else is coming up?
Yeah, I want to just go back to something you mentioned. You brought up the word shame.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that one is really big here, right? Is when we feel a sense of shame. I'm not enough. I'm not good enough. I've done, I'm bad as a human being. We want to kind of shut down and isolate and keep that very private, and not speak the truth. Right. But in not speaking the truth, what happens is our shame grows, right? It stays hidden. It stays in the dark. And really bringing that into the light with safe people and giving ourselves empathy and receiving empathy from others is what dissipates that shame.
Yeah. Thank you for expanding that. I mean, we could do 6 weeks of talking about shame and how that shows up. And again, it's a God-given emotion. It's how long we carry it for and what we let it do to our behaviors, our thought life that can get us into trouble with that. And so one way that you can sort of maybe feel supported, loved, ask questions about those experiences, any of the fears we've already mentioned, is Leslie has sort of a peer support group that we only open twice a year, and it's called Conquer. So there may be some of you here are already involved in that, and I'm not asking you to say who you are, but you might be able to, if you're comfortable, attesting to the power of those women and that group coming together to support each other through things like I'm afraid to, or has anyone out there, said something to their pastor and this is what the pastor said. So this is a great opportunity that we only open twice a year, and it's open right now. It's a membership that you would join. You can do it by month, and there's a private Facebook group. So separate from this, it's very, very private. You get access to all of Leslie's amazing materials. You get a workbook that we take the time to go through as coaches over 6 weeks, starting in just a couple of weeks, I think. Conquer's only open twice a year, and it's open right now, but only until next Friday, a week from today. So we just want to encourage you that if this doesn't quite feel comfortable yet for you, because it is a public page, there is a way to get that support, get educated, feel loved, feel seen, feel heard, but in a very private way. So we just want to make sure. And so if you can see it on the screen, and for those maybe listening in, it's leslievernick.com/conquer sign up. So it's pretty straightforward, but I wanted to share that opportunity. So as we start to unload this, if you're feeling overwhelmed, it's okay. There's other options for you going forward to get the kind of support and the love that you need. So sorry, Susan, go ahead.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. And I was just going to say that going to that page, so clicking on that page doesn't automatically sign you up. It'll give you more information about it. So if you have curiosities, but certainly if you have questions about Conquer and that program, you can plug those into the chat or send those questions to leslievernick.com/question/ and Jen and I would be happy to answer those. So if you've been on the fence, as you've heard us talking about Conquer, maybe you sat in on Leslie's workshop where she talked about, is it abuse if he doesn't hit me? That was the general theme of that. Maybe you got curious and you're looking for more support. And if something's holding you back, we would like to help you move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's why we're having some of these conversations this week and next during our Facebook Lives, like today, with our topic being, are you afraid to tell people the truth? Because we recognize these are common themes that come up in the Conquer Sisterhood. So again, you're not alone, and we acknowledge that this is a big topic, big conversation, something that might keep you up at night or make you feel ill physically, emotionally, spiritually, and we want to help you deal with that. So what else as we're talking comes up for what people might be afraid of? Let's take a look at some of the comments. Hello, Anita from Belgium. That's cool. So Tamika's saying, unfortunately, ladies who only survive their toxic relationship by being quiet are passing that habit on. That's true. So we could also, if I can spin that a little bit too, Tamika, I'm afraid my kids might find out. Well, they're already finding some stuff out. Pretty sure. They're smarter than we give them credit for sometimes. When us younger ladies or younger Christians speak up, then the blame is placed on the wife for husband's problem or bad behavior. Yeah. Speak up to people that you can trust and that are safe. It helps. So it sounds like you've got some experience with that, Tamika. So I appreciate you sharing that. That's amazing. So Wendy's saying not being believed. That would be an awful feeling, right? You finally have the courage to speak up and they just minimize or just discard you altogether. Yeah, that's
yeah. And Diana is saying, being overly criticized, I think. Your husband goes back or somebody goes back over and double checks it. If you're dealing with that OCD person in your life that's highly critical of you, it's hard to engage with that, right?
Yeah, that's very true. That's good. And Joelle, you nailed a common one I also hear, and I'm sure Susan does as well. I wanted to protect my husband's image. So it becomes image management or family image management. And it does cause us to shut down. And it's one thing for our husbands or a toxic relationship to isolate us from people, but sometimes we do it to ourselves. We stay small. We choose not to engage because we're afraid of what the image might be. Similar to that too, Susan, I don't know about you, but I have often heard that if I finally do speak the truth, say to my family, and my husband and I decide to reconcile or things improve down that, like, will my family still accept him?
Yeah.
So it's not even just about us being accepted. It's will they be accepted? Because that could really cause family issues or dynamic shifts, right? So
yeah, I think that's a big one. Actually, I've experienced that for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's hard.
And
Um,
it's all in my head, that self-doubt. So people can tell you, you've imagined that, that's all in your head, but then you can start to do that to yourself too. It really isn't that bad. Maybe I shouldn't say anything because I invented that, right? That wasn't really my experience. So you can get gaslit from others, but you can gaslight yourself.
yes. Yes. Very, very much so. So we've got one question so far. Do you want to pause for a second and answer that? And then we'll shift into maybe talking about how to discern safe people. How does that
Sure.
sound? Okay.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm not seeing that question. If you don't
So
mind reading it.
yeah, I'll go ahead and read it. So my fear is of telling my soon-to-be ex-husband the truth, that we are really divorcing, that our teen daughters want a very limited relationship with him, that I do not want to reconcile since he hasn't made any changes. My fear is about how he will react. Will he sabotage our business? So there's that financial stuff I was speaking about. Or act out against me financially or otherwise. How do I address this? Good one. So we're talking about speaking our truth about divorcing, what this is going to do to our family, and what the potential is to do to our business, our finances. So what are some ideas? And then I'll chime in.
Yeah, my first thought is, so I don't know your situation. Safety is always the first thing, right? So if you're afraid of telling him the truth, why are you afraid of that? What do you think might happen? And if you're at risk in some way, physically, safety wise, or he's going to unload on you with his anger, it's important to take that seriously. So it may be that you don't have that conversation with him. Perhaps your lawyer has a conversation with his lawyer. Perhaps those papers get served. Perhaps you write a letter or a text as you get yourself to safety, right? So having a plan in place that you're just leaving word of what's happening, but you're already in a safe place. If it's not about safety and you're just afraid of letting these words come out of your mouth, because that can be scary, right? It feels very final, and there's going to be big feelings in the room for sure. I think definitely taking a breath and preparing for that conversation. Maybe writing it out, maybe practicing it with a girlfriend, maybe recording it into your phone and hearing it back, so that you can make sure that you're showing up in a healthy way, and that you are showing up as your best self and not just trying to blame or shame him.
Yeah. That's amazing, because that's all in keeping with our big circle. We want to, as Leslie often says, we want to speak the truth, and it can be hard. God never promised the truth would be easy, but it doesn't have to be harsh. It may be hard for you to say, may be hard for him to hear, but it doesn't mean we step out of our big circle and start name calling and yelling and throwing things, or either way, whether it's you doing it or getting it back. That's not what God called us to be. He called us to speak the truth in love, but it still may be hard. And so I can appreciate what this scenario involves. The only other thing I would add is, when you were talking about your teen daughters, I'm not sure which end of the spectrum they're on, 13 or 19 kind of idea, but this may be a really great sort of woman to woman teaching opportunity here, to sit down, and I'm sure you already have had this conversation with them, how they want to speak up for themselves, so that you don't have to do it, because that way you're teaching them to speak up, speak their truth with boundaries. They're saying they want a limited relationship with him. What does that mean? Have them kind of come up with that, normalize what they're experiencing, say whatever limits you put on, like any boundaries we talk about, they need to be firm. They can be friendly, and they can be flexible.
Yeah.
They can change their mind. So having that dialogue with them separately, and then if it's safe to do so, having each of them talk to their dad, or the two of them talking to their dad together, maybe with you present, but you let them do the talking. That's another approach you could possibly take that not only communicates to him the boundaries that the girls want, but also teaching them a powerful, hopefully empowering example of how they might choose to live the rest of their lives.
Yeah. I love that you said that. I'm in total agreement of that. I think it's a delicate issue for you to speak into that issue. I think legally it's delicate, right? If you start speaking for your daughters about how they're not going to have a relationship, that may not be viewed well in the legal system. And so giving that power over to them and you kind of stepping out of the relationship your daughters have with their father, I think will protect you. And I would definitely recommend that you get some legal support in terms of the financial part. So, with your business, with where finances are, before you mention anything, right? So there needs to be some safeguards in place, what happens financially so that he can't act out, right? As I was rereading that question, I'm seeing that's your biggest fear, right? Is what he's going to do with the finances. And so I think doing that groundwork first to protect the finances so that he can't act out. And that would take some legal help.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I love that. Thank you for suggesting that. And it's a lot of times too, when we're talking about fear, it doesn't always have to be as scary as we make it up to be. So I don't know, Susan, you're so good at talking about the emotional aspect and tying our emotions to thoughts and how that causes it to linger. Can you speak to just fear in general and how we attach ourselves to that? And then maybe from there, we can talk about how to make something a little less scarier than we're making it out to be.
Yeah, I do think that's important. That's certainly something that we do in the Conquer educational toolbox, right? We really step into how thoughts and feelings are tied together. The narrative that we tell ourselves in our minds about these situations impact how we feel, how intensely we feel. And so doing that inner work of what is my greatest fear? How am I thinking about this? How else could I be thinking about this? And what supports do I need? So there is that, I think, importance of breathing in and really noticing how you feel about the situation, not just the fear, but I can imagine there are lots of emotions. Intense grief, maybe anger and resentment. I'm just guessing at these, but doing that work of processing your own emotions can help you show up better in a conversation. Because what happens oftentimes is when we don't recognize our emotions, we haven't processed them, they come out in our conversations in unhealthy ways where we try to blame or get other people to manage our emotions. And that sets us up for more difficult conversations that generally escalate and don't go well. So I can't help you in terms of how he's going to receive any of this, but for you to be prepared to have a good conversation means that you've really done your internal work of processing all that you feel and showing up in a practiced and prayed up way.
Yeah, that's so powerful. And that's one thing of many that Conquer can help you do is step into where on this journey you might be. So part of what was coming up for me, Susan, as you were sharing that, is some of us might only be in the awakening phase. So we start off our Conquer 6-week journey out of the workbook talking about that, because you might just be starting to awaken to that you have a truth to tell, that you have a story that I don't know how yet, but I want to show up. I need to show up. And so you might just be becoming aware of that. And that might be where you are. Others are ready to take the leap, and so you'll find this on the Conquer journey that there's all different places you can parachute into. You'll always have access to your workbook, so you can always go back, redo. We talk a lot at one, I think maybe it's the second week. Remind me, it's the safety planning.
Yeah, it is second week.
So these are very much powerful tools, let alone the supports that you might get as a sisterhood and as a community that is safe, that someone else out there, trust me, knows what you're going through or has been through it and can feed back to you if you want that information. And that's part of what I was thinking too, is not always, okay, and this is where we have to, be mindful, but sometimes things aren't as scary as we make them out to be. So that's what I was saying earlier about fear being our worst counselor, because if the enemy's behind it, then we can make up stuff. So, and I'm not speaking even just to our last person that posted that question, but one example I had years ago from a client, she was beyond paralyzed with fear about her finances. And I know I'm from Canada, but I know a lot of the states are similar to what they are here, where it's 50-50 no matter what. Okay. And without seeing her bank account, I had every reason to believe this woman was probably a millionaire. No word of a lie. And yet she was terrified. So we worked through that. What was the fear for? Like, and as she got thinking about it, and then we came up with, well, what can you do about this? What team of people can you bring in? One of them being legal advice. And she hadn't done that. And all she had to do was sit down and have a consult with a lawyer. I'm not saying she was filing for divorce or anything. She just got educated on how this might impact her finances. And all of a sudden you could feel like there's still a little bit of that nervousness, but the great aspect of that fear was lifted from her because she recognized she's not going to be thrown out onto the street. She ultimately thought she would lose everything. And he educated her. So what was a big paralyzing fear, with education, with surrounding yourselves with the right support, in speaking your voice, shrinks that fear. May not go away altogether, but every time we shrink those fears and we spend less energy on those fears, it's the more energy we have to give to the Lord and advance the kingdom and show up in the way that he's called us to be. So that's what we're here trying to help you do, is become aware. What are your fears? Who are your safe people? What is your truth? What a powerful way that if you haven't ever had a chance to share your story, by joining Conquer, you get a chance and find women that have been through something similar. So, this is really powerful stuff.
Well, I love that you just brought out the two most powerful things about Conquer: education and support, and your story that you were talking about. So this woman got some education, which really helped her settle those fears, right? Helped her be more equipped to deal with her circumstances. But then the extra support, in this situation, it was legal support, but that getting that support of other people who understand you, who can step in and help guide you, is so impactful, right? Yeah. If you feel like you're stuck. So, like you said, Jen, we're not pushing you to divorce or not divorce. We are not ever pushing you in any direction. It's just giving you education and support so you can decide for yourself what's best for your situation.
Absolutely. Amen to that, because Coach Susan and I don't have to live your life. Neither does your sister. You're in real life. Neither does anybody else in your life except for you. And so that's why here we just want to provide you with the resources. Like I said, Leslie's extensive blogs, videos, the workbook, like I said, is so powerful in helping you do your own internal work so that you can make the best choices for yourself, which I think is amazing. So I put the link up again for Conquer. If you're interested in getting more information, it's on the page, leslievernick.com/Conquer sign up. So take a look there. It's such an affordable way to get the support. If your finances are limited, this is very, very powerful indeed. Worth every penny. Absolutely.
It is. So. And you referenced what we call the Conquer journey, right? When you mentioned the awakening phase, kind of what we call step 0, right? Just becoming aware and alert to what's going on. So when you sign up, this is part of us ushering you into this community as a weekly check-in with you to go through these stages, just to scratch the surface of the direction that all the things that you can learn, right? So it's 6 weeks, right, Jen, of the Conquer journey, where a coach will join you in a Zoom call to kind of help you go through some of the workbook and answer any questions you have, help you to feel comfortable with the material. But that's not the end of Conquer, right? That's just us holding your hands as you enter into the waters, but then you're kind of open up to lots more education after that. And you can kind of go where you need to go within the library of, am I right, hundreds of videos?
Oh, I would say so, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And so that's good too, for that ongoing support, to remind me that. And we recently started doing this because there are women that have been with us for quite some time, and we forget sometimes what's in that amazing, powerful library. So we've been taking some groups of topics and then going into the Conquer group and reminding women that, remember when you thought a year ago you were at the safety stage? Well, think now of where you might be, and guess what? All the resources are talking about this, and we'll remind you that it doesn't have to be done, that there's a wealth of information in there for us to have probably for the rest of our lives. There's lots in there. So,
and it's always changing is the thing that just blows my mind, right? Yeah. There are so many supports coming in at all times, new videos being posted. I just learned that our Conquer members and our support staff put together different booklets, like how can you earn the money to support your Conquer membership, right? So a bunch of ideas of how you can earn money. And then along with that ebook about, before you say you don't, right? Preparing yourself for legal support. There's so many different resources and always new things happening and changing, so much that you can be involved with, or picking and choosing, right? It's a menu of so many different things so that you get exactly what you need and you choose.
Yeah, I love that. We give the freedom. So there is a question that just came in, and I think it's right on topic right now. It says, can you clarify how Conquer Getting Started works? I know it has 5 sessions, but are they done in a group or individually? What is the process? So really, this is self-guided. It's all peer support. It's only when we open twice a year that you will have a bit of a guide with one of us coaches through the workbook. Like as Susan said, we barely scratch the surface. We just want to give you, how long are we on there? About an hour, maybe? Yeah. And each of us takes turns doing step 0, 1, 2, 3, all the way. I think Karen put them into the chat, what the different parts of the journey are. So that's all in a big group. And we do it for about an hour or so on Wednesdays, typically, I think, Susan, around noon Eastern. And then it's not done after that. We're just giving you a taste of what's available. The real bulk of what Conquer is about is that community. Are those monthly calls where we get on as coaches and answer all your questions, or we can just love on each other. There's the circle groups where they're starting to take women with specific topics in mind and breaking off on their own. This is, again, with the help of our support team and the Conquer mentors. This is separate from coaching. So the coaches are only in there initially to give you love and support and kind of guide you through this. And then after that, it's all peer led with fellow sisters and some that have been around quite some time and have become mentors in our group. So what else would you add to how we get started?
Yeah, so I think you did great with that. So it is a week of studying awakening, a week of going deep into safety, clarity, stability, strength, and confidence. And we really do help you in the workbook with those in the beginning, right? And then, like Jen said, you're on your own to do what you need to do. You're on your own with loads of support. Let me say that, right? Yes. But the time that you put into it is totally up to you. You could spend hours a day. You could spend 15 minutes a day. You could, check in once a month. It's totally up to you.
And that's what I love about this. It's very flexible, and we expose you to something that might help you go, you know what? I think I'm beyond safety right now. I need more of the stabilization or something like that. So that may be your focus right now. The rest of it is helpful, or now you know where it is, but it may not speak to you. That's why we want to introduce the topics as new members are joining. The other thing we do for new members is, for a very short period of time, we introduce just the new women into their own private Facebook group. So they're not feeling overwhelmed by the members that have been there for quite some time. So I can't remember how long, couple of weeks, 3 weeks maybe, we're in our own private Facebook group just for new people joining right now. And then with lots of notice, we shift you into the larger group, so you can feel safer and kind of adjust as you start to get to know other people in the larger group. So we do it gently. As far as I can tell, we do it intentionally gently so that you're not too overwhelmed, and that you have the chance to kind of ease into this, so to speak. So that's essentially it. There's, offerings of different Facebook Lives, our Conquer call twice a month, once during the day, the other time takes place in the evening. All the resources that we have. So all the rest of it is how you decide you want to invest your time and energy. So, and I'm pretty sure we probably do replays. We must.
Yes, there are replays for all of it.
Yeah.
Yep. So if you can't make the Wednesday at noon meetings, you can catch it on the replay.
Yeah, absolutely. So hopefully that helps answer your question. And if any of the Conquer sisters that are here and feel safe and comfortable in doing so, write into the chat either what your experience has been or what we've missed, because we're not involved in it every day. And I know it's just a very powerful community that we have. So I don't want to do it a disservice. So if there's anything that any of you want to add, I'd be very, very grateful. So
yeah. And I see Karen adding lots into the chat for us. And, Karen is definitely an expert on all things Conquer.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So that's great. Well, thank you. We have another question here, but why don't we shift gears a little bit? So I'm conscious of the time. What would you like to say about who to tell?
In terms of safe people?
Yeah. Let's start talking about that a little bit.
I think that is really important, because sometimes you go into that place of isolation for a time and then feel desperate just to tell, and maybe choosing the wrong person to tell can be risky. And it is important to really settle into, who are my safe people who are going to hold this, whatever that information is, as precious, right? And to provide empathy rather than judgment, who are going to hold space for you to process.
Yeah. I love that holding space. That's part of our discernment in recognizing who is safe emotionally for us, who is safe spiritually. And sometimes we can still be surprised by their response or their reaction. And we can't do anything about that. But going into it, I think we all know certain people in our lives that make us feel safer than others, just in normal everyday conversation. Who is truly empathetic to me? Who is aligned with my spiritual values? I mean, if you know someone is dead set against divorce, then if that's on the table for you, even just this much, that might not be the safe person you want to talk to. It doesn't mean you can't share part of what you're going through, but there's going to be certain things that you only tell certain people, if at all. Susan, speak to us about the layers of truth. That might help people decide who is safe and when.
Yeah. I was just struck by a comment in the chat.
Okay.
Is there a safe person to tell? Really? Is there? Yes, Wendy, there are safe people out there. I know it seems like they're few and far between. We always have safety in talking to God about these things, but I think it is important to find safe people. So how do you do that? So Jen asked, those layers of truth. I know a lot of you in our community want to be authentic, right? Want to be truthful people, which is a wonderful quality. But how vulnerable do you get with your truth? That's the question. And I think when you don't know somebody well enough to know if they're safe, starting out with that least vulnerable truth, right? And that may sound like, I'm in a really hard space right now, right? You don't give details of what that's like for you. You just share that and then watch. What do they do with that? Do they move on to the next topic? Do they start talking about the weather? Do they apologize for you? I mean, do they say, I'm sorry to hear that for you. Tell me more, right? Do they hold space for you? In other words, do they help you press into that a little bit with empathy? Do they maybe switch to, well, everybody's having a hard time. Let me tell you about my hard time, right? That kind of tells you, are they open to being safe with you? Are they open to hearing more? Are they open to asking you curious questions? And then you can go a little bit deeper if it feels safe, right? I don't mean going all in and completely vulnerable. This is testing the water of the safety, and it takes time to build that. This is not in one event of talking with somebody. This is over time. How do they show up in relationship? Do I have evidence that they're healthy? Do I have evidence that they take care of themselves well and others in their life well? Have I ever heard them gossiping about others?
And those are all good places to start, amazing places to start, because you're looking at what their big circle is that you see, right? So I love that you mentioned that. If you've already known them for 20 years and they are a gossip, I don't know that they're a safe person to go and divulge your very personal vulnerabilities with, because you might end up being the next topic of gossip. Right? Unless you don't mind that, that's up to you. But that's just one identifying thing that you can glean from past experiences with these people, how they've shown up in other areas in your relationship long before you might introduce a very difficult topic. And let me just say this too. Because you don't share your truth with a particular person doesn't mean you care about them any less. It doesn't necessarily change that dynamic. It may be heartbreaking a little bit that you wish you could share with that individual and you've learned probably not a good idea. There may be some grieving there, but it doesn't have to change the rest of your relationship. Doesn't mean you're being dishonest, doesn't mean you're lying. You have to just find your right, safe people. People have to earn the right to hear your story. You don't have to go and tell everyone everything. You have the right to pick and choose both what you say, when you say it, how you say it, and to whom. And so we want you to take away some of this as a way to just start thinking, okay, who might be my safe people? You might even start with just a list of people, brainstorm, who might I want to share with? And then you walk through each person and say, well, what might the risks be in telling this person my truth? Or how much do I want to share? What's at stake? And then that will help you discern as well. Ask the Lord for guidance. Ask him to bring you the right person to share with. I know sometimes some of our clients, Susan, we are the only ones they've ever shared their story with. Yes. So it might be a paid person to hear your truth. And we do our best, both personally and as professionals, to make sure we do hold that space for you, that we do create a safe environment for you to share and feel loved on with no judgment.
Yeah. And so if you're feeling like Wendy, she's saying God is all she has, right? There's no safe people. That's why Leslie developed this community over 10 years ago, right? Is because these are all women who understand, who have gone through destructive marriages or destructive relationships, who have that deep understanding. And she has built a safe community. I love to see that. So when I'm watching the Facebook group and the communication there, how people accept and love on each other is amazing. And there are differences of opinion, right? There are different belief systems, but how people respect and love on each other is amazing. That support is great. And there's participation guidelines to help with safety, right? And there are people monitoring that to make sure that it's safe. And there are lots of checks and balances to make sure that what we're providing is safe.
Absolutely. Right down to the team needs to make sure that they know your email account is attached to your Facebook profile, to like they go through lots of steps to make sure that it's really you showing up, so that all the other women can feel safe, that if Coach Susan says something on there, it really is Susan.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so yeah, we go out of our way to build that kind of safety and trust in the process. So some of your safe people may become those sisters in the Facebook community.
Yeah.
And again, it's a beautiful place to go with, like you said, a difference of opinion, but always with love and respect. It's not, I've in 3 something years I've been in Conquer, I don't think I've ever seen like a heated, you know how you see those things sometimes in other places, like
lots of negativity.
Nasty. I don't think I've ever seen anything like that in this space. So I think that's really important for us to, I don't think we can stress it anymore. You would just have to experience it for yourself to recognize how loved you are.
Mm-hmm. And with it being such a large support group, right? Upwards around 2,000 people, I believe, give or take, depending on time of year or month. There may be somebody who's in your neighborhood that you could meet up with in person. And I see that so often, right? That women begin connecting because they're in the same vicinity. They're in the same city or near the same city. And so they can drive to meet each other for lunch, right? So they start building those connections with each other. And it's such a beautiful thing.
Yeah. I apologize for the construction outside. I don't know if it's distracting. It's just another.
I can barely hear it.
So I apologize if anyone's listening, if it's interfering. Yeah, I love that. I just wanted to pause for a second, Susan, in case we have time. Karen's letting us know that someone started submitting a question and the rest of it didn't come through. So if that was you, it started off when I told of an incident of abuse. So I'm not sure if that was the end of it, and that's what, I don't know what happened, but if you want to resubmit that, we'd appreciate that and hopefully get a chance to answer. Yeah. So that's great. Thanks for bringing that to our attention, Karen. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, because I'm seeing in the chat, is there a way to connect locally with others? Yes. So there are groups based on regions where you can see where others are at, and you can connect that way.
Yeah.
So absolutely. That is definitely a possibility.
Yeah. And we've heard such amazing stories about some of the ladies getting together forever. It's just very, I mean, I've belonged to my own version of support groups back in the day, and there is nothing as powerful as actually getting to meet someone in person for the first time. So I've ended up flying to Nevada, Utah, Colorado to meet some of my fellow support sisters. It's just amazing. So even if they're not immediately in your area and you can go for dinner, like me, I got on an airplane and went and visited them. So it is really cool when you can find people in your neighborhood. So yeah, that's great.
And that is private information. Who is in Conquer is absolutely private, but once you join and you've been vetted and you're in the group, you get to see where people are in those areas. So Wendy's asking, where do I find that? You won't find that unless you're in Conquer. And that will be information that you can access once you're in that community.
Yeah. Yeah. And Karen's reminding us that we will have our Conquer conference, which only happens every couple of years, later this fall. So that's an opportunity to connect with lots of amazing speakers, topics, small groups. We do breakouts. I'm not sure if we've landed yet on what we're doing, but we're going between in person and online, maybe. So you have like financial reasons that maybe it's less expensive for you to stay home and watch it. Or we've wanted to encourage regional, go somewhere and watch it together. Anyway, so there's lots of great opportunities to get connected. So and that Conquer conference is only open to Conquer members. So that's great. That's great. What else can you think of? I know we're getting short on time, but I want to, if anyone else in the chat too, about discerning who safe people are. I mean, maybe there's some of you out there that are comfortable sharing what not to do. That might be one thing, right? Or, the other way, of course, would be, what should I do? So we've talked about listening to the Lord, asking the Lord to bring you those safe people, looking at past experiences in those relationships with that person to see how they show up already, in maybe less contentious topics, and maybe that'll help you decide. What else?
I'm just trying to, I'm just catching up in the chat. Some of the comments there. Where is this conference going to be? We don't know exactly yet, so stay tuned for that information. All the details are in the works, and so we'll have a big reveal at some point, but we're not ready to do that.
No.
Leslie always puts on an amazing conference, so I have no doubt that it will be. She's so generous.
Yes,
it usually involves gifts and pampering and things like that. So I'm excited to see how this evolves.
Yes. So Karen's reminding us that it's most likely be virtual. And we had to do that a couple of years ago, just, coming out of COVID, and we were being mindful of that. And my goodness, it worked well. I know, like I said, it's not quite the same of wrapping your arms around another person, but we did everything we could to give you the next best experience to that. And it was really amazing. And the connections that were made out of that, even though done virtually, was awesome. So we look forward to seeing you there in some way, shape, or form come probably late October. So that's great. So I think we have one other question in here that we haven't got to yet. Do you see it there?
I do. I can read it.
Sure.
I need help with children. They need resources. Dad denies and lies about all. And when I spoke to the church to get help and went to the courts repeatedly, my daughter saw the horrific fight it took to get him out. All resources in Maryland are horrific. You have to be near death with bruises and wounds everywhere. I have been fighting for my sanity. For 18 years, I had no support, and only God was there with me. I'm showing my children this so they can prevent being in the same situation. That's what's important. I spoke and was shunned by church and most family. What did I do to put myself in this position? And it's my problem.
That's hard.
Yeah, a lot of pain there.
Yeah. And understandably so. You tried to show up and get the help that you need and deserve, and to be put away like that. I'm not sure. I can only imagine what that entailed. It could have been verbally at you. They could have maybe excommunicated you either out of the relationship or even the church itself. So there's lots that's gone there. But I'm going to just come right out and say, I don't think you did a thing to put yourself in this position. But I recognize there's a lot of guilt and shame that may come along with this. And you do start to question, what did I do? How did this happen? What did I do wrong? And those are healthy questions to ask, because, nothing's ever a mistake if we learn from it. So I'm sorry that you had to go through this. And yet at the same time, it's an opportunity to learn and grow. And possibly, as you're being vulnerable with us here today, other women can not only help you with what they've been through, but you're helping them by listening to your story as well. So anyway, keep going, Susan. What else would you add?
Yeah. So much pain there, but you're not alone, right? So this is a story we hear. The legal community doesn't show up well. That's often the case, right? Unfortunately, being shunned by the church, we hear that so often. And I'm so sorry when that happens, but it does happen. You're not alone in that. Being ostracized by family, such a common thing in our community. You're not alone in that either. So rather than looking at, how did I get here? We want to help you move through that and how to never let it happen again, right? Getting strong in yourself so that you can recover, rather than staying in that place of self-doubt and self-blame about this, is how do I protect myself going forward? How do I build a strong core sense of myself and great boundaries? How do I learn to communicate so that I can have great relationships moving forward?
Yeah.
Right. That's what we're all about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Helping you do that.
Yeah. And that is the power of coaching, and the way we've set up this ministry is we do acknowledge and validate what brought you here. We just don't stay there. we work on acknowledging that's hard and that you've been through this. Now what? Now what? What do I need to do? So there's one last question if we have time to get to that, because I think it fits really well with what we were just saying. So I know what I have to do and have a plan on paper, but implementing and taking action is like, I'd rather keep learning indefinitely than take action on what I've learned to progress. How do I stop dragging my feet? Right. So I think it is looking at, okay, what does my ideal self, what does my best godly self look like 6 months from now, a year from now, 5 years from now? And then you can start looking at baby steps as to what would get you there. Looking at like what we talked about today, stripping away some of those fears, looking at those limiting beliefs that are keeping you small, that's keeping you from dragging your feet. So a lot of what we've talked about today can be the spark, just like the Conquer journey. When you get introduced to that in the workbook, you may hit on different pockets of that information in there that's going to just click, and you're going to go, okay, I can take that one next baby step. That's all we ever say around here is my next best step.
Yes.
Sometimes your next best step is just going and getting a shower. We don't ask that it be huge. We just ask that maybe it's different and it's intentional.
Yeah.
And we can hold each other accountable here too.
Yes, that's what I was going to say, that accountability, right? Mm-hmm. Having a support group where you can announce your next right step. So how do you stop dragging your feet? You pick up your foot and you set it down in a new place, right? Yeah. So it's really defining what is my goal and what is my next right step to get there. And then having somebody check in with you about that, right? Having that support group. As you were reading this question, Jen, I was thinking, yeah, there's a video for that in the Conquer library, right? Mm-hmm. Conquering your big, hairy, audacious goal, which may be taking a shower, or it may be, building your own business. It could be anything, right? Mm-hmm. Is that big goal. But there's a video to help you work through that. Yeah. Pretty much anything that you could come up with, there's a video on it. And if there's not, we're going to be making a video on it, right? Yeah. If you have a need. Yeah, that's what I love is that Leslie and the coaches are always looking at what are the big needs here and mm-hmm. what do these women need? What do they need to learn? What do they need support in? Mm-hmm. And that's why a new video pops up addressing new things. Yeah. So
no, that's great.
I hope that was helpful. I do want to just have you pause for a minute. All mm-hmm. of you that are still with us, thank you for still being here. But what was helpful today? So you all joined in with this topic. Are you afraid to tell the truth for a purpose? You had something on your mind, something you wanted to get about out of this. What is your takeaway? What's really resonating with you? Mm-hmm. I would love to see those responses in the chat if you can.
And you can keep adding to the chat. Even when we sign off here in just a couple of minutes, we can still see what people are posting, either because they've watched it on the replay or you're continuously adding. So don't let us just signing off stop you from saying what your biggest takeaways are, because you might mention something that another woman hasn't considered, and then you'll wake her up to something as well. So I think that's really powerful. So thank you, Susan, for that. And we also would like to remind everybody that we're back again on Monday, this coming Monday at noon Eastern. So it's going to be Susan and Elise, and we're talking about how do you trust a liar? So that would be an interesting topic, right? So definitely tune in for that. Keep posting into the chat any of your questions, and we'll come around. We're in there. We can see stuff. And so Susan and I will do our best, as will the other coaches, maybe chime in if there's something, but love on each other if you feel comfortable to do so. And we'll just keep going from there and hopefully see you in Conquer, which ends next week. The sign up is not open again until the fall. So after next Friday, you go on a wait list. So if now's not the timing for you, that's okay. You'll go on a wait list, and then we'll reintroduce it again in the fall. So
yeah, I'm just reading in the chat some of the takeaways, how to discern who is safe to share with. Yeah, it's really powerful, right? You need safe people in your life, and having those boundaries. Somebody else mentioned using those boundaries to help you discern.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, we're about to lose our Instagram followers in a
Yes.
second here. So I just want to say a big thank you for your engagement today. This always makes our conversations so rich, right, Susan? Like, it just, you guys are so brave to not only show up, but to participate. And a big shout out to Karen, as always, for helping us gather the questions and feedback to all of you in the chat. So thank you, Karen. And thank you, Susan, for always such an engaging conversation. You're so wise. Thank you.
Oh, you too, Jen. So good to be with you. Thank you, ladies.
Yeah,
And we'll
yeah.
see you on Monday.
Okay. Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.